starts with an ATM withdrawal. So let's say, you know, right before 4th of July, I went to the ATM and I withdrew $200 in cash. I see that transaction come through my transaction sheet, fed by Tiller Money data feeds. It's coming out of my primary checking account. It's a withdrawal. So how do we handle cash transactions from the ATM withdrawals? How do we think about, like, well, we have a balance of $200 cash. How do we track the spending for the cash? Or maybe you get just paid in cash and you need a way to track it. So there's a few different methods. I'm going to try to go through the different ones, and you can kind of pick what works for you. It may be different for everybody depending on how meticulous you want to be. The simplest method is with this ATM withdrawal, you can actually just use the Tiller Money Labs add-on to just split that transaction. So every time I make a purchase, I can use this add-on. If you don't have it, you can go to Get Add-ons and then search for Tiller Money Labs. I've already got it installed and kind of running in this demo sheet. And so usually you just, you know, you categorize this specific transaction as a transfer. So the ATM withdrawal. And then every time I spend money from that cash, I can track it using the splitter by just adding splits from that transaction. That's the simplest way. And so the splitter is under Tools, Split Transaction, and then it's going to fetch that transaction I selected. I'll just say, let's say it's, you know, $20, and I'll then just, let's say it's for groceries or something. And I'll say Add Split. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I'm going to split it that way. So it's going to let me know that I have a remainder. That is the balance of my cash. So Randy, can you help me out? Would I say yes or no? I just want to keep that 180 as its own transaction.
Just trying to catch up with you, Heather.
Sorry, I actually didn't test this one. I forgot about the prorating thing. So so I want to leave that, like, I want a 180 transaction and then I want the $20 transaction. So if I click yes, if I prorate the remainder, is it just going to leave that 180?
I think, do you want the total still to be 200? It looked to me like you didn't actually split it, like you only had one line item in there.
Yeah, so I want it to be, okay, so I get what you're saying.
I think I would cancel and start over.
Okay. All right, so let's say this is restaurants and then negative. Do I need to
You don't need the negative.
Okay. All right, so add split, and then I got the 180, and this is still gonna stay transfer. That makes more sense now, thank you. So now you can see I have that 180, and then I have the 180, and I can just change this. Maybe it was like the taco truck where I spent the cash. That's the simplest method. So then I know what is my balance. Okay, I have to kind of look at this ATM withdrawal. I see that I have 180 left in my cash. So I'm just gonna clear this one and put this back to 200. So that's the most simple method. A tidier method that you can use to track your cash is to add the oppositional transfer for the withdrawal and basically create a cash account. And so you can insert rows to your transaction sheet. So I'm basically just going to copy the same row from here, and then I'm going to paste it in. Oops, like that. And then I want this to be 200 because it's going to be my cash account. So I'm basically creating a fictional account called cash, and I'll say that this is ATM inflow to cash. So now this is my balance of the cash account. And then I can change these details. You know, there's not really a transaction ID. There's not really an institution, things like that. From there, I can just insert rows as needed and deduct the amount from the cash account manually. And so I can just insert another row, and let's say on 7/7, I went to that taco truck, and we'll say restaurants, and that was $20, so -20 cash. Both of these transactions, the outflow from my checking account and the inflow to my cash account, are going to be transfers. So those are both transfers. And then when I want to figure out what the balance of my cash is, I can actually filter and sort the sheet and just kind of look at the sum of my cash account. So to turn on the filter, you can select this rectangle in the upper left, turn the filter on here. It's going to warn me, but I know what I'm doing, so I'll just say don't show and then click OK. I can then just filter down to my cash account here, and then I can check my balance. So when I look in the bottom, I can get the sum here is 180. So down in the bottom right. So that's a tidier method. You know, you're manually adding the transactions, but it is a way to do it, and it is a way to get a balance. We can take it a level beyond that if we want. If we want to get even more meticulous about how we track and use some of the features that are available in the Tiller Money Feeds add-on for having it show up in our balances sheet here, as well as the Tiller Labs add-on to actually use the manual transaction add functionality to be adding those manual transactions instead of inserting rows. And so the next level to do that, I'll clear both of these out to kind of just start the workflow from the beginning. So I have this withdrawal, you know, my ATM withdrawal. The first thing I'll want to do is go into the Tiller Money Feeds add-on. This is where you manage manual accounts that we're not automating. So a cash account is an account that we're not automating the balance of that for you, because the cash is leaving your checking account and you're seeing that, you know, ATM withdrawal here. So I'll go to manual accounts in the Tiller Money Feeds add-on. And I don't have any right now. I'm going to add a manual account for cash. And then I'm just going to make up an account number, institution, cash. It's an asset because there's a balance. And I just always choose other when I demo this. And then here's my $200, this balance that I pulled from my checking account. So I'll add the manual account. So now I have an account that's going to show up on my balances sheet here. So you can see cash today, $200. Great. Next, I can use the Tiller Money Labs add-on to add the cash transaction. So I want to keep, you know, I want to see the other side of that transfer. I want to see that transaction inflow to that cash account. So now that I've added that manual account in the Tiller Money Feeds add-on, I can use the Labs add-on to add manual transactions. So I'll go to manual transaction under Tools, add manual transaction. This is going to be a deposit because I'm basically funding that cash account, so that $200. And then I'm going to say, I already got it here, ATM inflow to cash. I'm going to set this as a transfer. It's going to go to my cash account, and I don't want to flag it for reconcile because I'm never going to see the other side of that coming in because it's not automated. So I'm going to add transaction there.
Heather, while that processes, it's worth noting that we demoed this manual transaction workflow a couple weeks ago, and also demoed the reconcile capability.
Yeah.
And that's all archived on the community, right?
Yep, that's right. So you can access that and learn all about those reconcile features. So I'll go ahead and I'll just classify this, categorize this, the outflow from my checking account also as transfers. So those are netting out to zero, and that makes sense. And now I have that, you know, I've got that balance in there. Now, what happens when I spend the money? The nice thing about creating the manual account using Tiller Money Feeds is that all those transactions that are that I'm using my cash for, I can now use the Labs add-on to manually add those as well. So now I can go to add manual transaction. And for my taco truck here, it's going to be a withdrawal. It was $20. I'll just say taco truck. It's going to be restaurants. And then once again, it's cash. And then I don't want to flag it for reconcile because I'm never going to see the other side of that one. So it's going to add that transaction. And then, you know, I'm going to see that -20. But then what about my balance? Now, one thing to keep in mind with Tiller Money in our spreadsheets and the way the feeds work is that the transaction sheet is totally separate data feed and data set than the balances sheet. So you'll notice that when I go to my balances sheet, that my balance for that cash account is still $200. So even though I manually added that transaction for $20, my balance didn't go down by that $20. So in this workflow, you would then launch the Tiller Money Feeds add-on, open the sidebar or launch, And you can then update the balance for that manual account here under manual accounts. It selects that cash one really because it's the only one. And then I just, I do the math in my head. It's 180 now. So I can update balance. That's that minus 20 that corresponds to that taco truck. And then I see the 180 here. Okay, so the last option for getting even more nerdy, I have this in my notes as the super spreadsheet nerd method, because it would be nice if this balance would update on its own. And so I actually have this documented already on the community. And in the resources I send tomorrow, I'll be sure to include the link. But essentially, you can take that, you can take the balance history entry that the Tiller Money Feeds add-on created the first time we added the account. So the first manual entry, I'm actually just going to delete the second one that I just entered, just so I can demo that this actually works. So I still have this 200 one, right? So this community article or community topic here has this nifty formula that I can put into the balance history sheet for that manual account. Sorry if I can find the right one here. I'm going to overwrite the balance and just enter this formula in. And it's looking for the account column being column H. In this transaction sheet, the count column is actually column F. So I do need to tweak that. The standard foundation template, or just standard column setup in the foundation template, is in H, but once I update this to F, I'll see that now my balance is 180. So this is just looking at the transaction sheet, and it's summing the transactions that have happened based on the activity and those manual transactions that I've added. So if you're very diligent about making sure you get the starting balance in there, and then like recording the transactions as you're funding things, then it should net out to be the actual balance of that cash account. And then you don't have to do that manual step. The other thing that a couple tricks that I did with these formulas in here are so that it's, that it always shows updated today. You can change the date to equals today, and then now it's going to be today. And then if I want to make sure that if I ever use these month and week columns, I can add these other couple formulas here that are going to calculate the month and the week based on today's date. Now, the pros of this are that you don't have to do that manual step of updating the balance manually in Tiller Money Feeds. The con of it is that you don't get the historical trend of your cash account over time. It's always just going to have the current balance for today based on what the activity in your transaction sheet. So just keep that in mind. If you, for some reason, don't add a transaction to the transaction sheet, it could be off. It's always good to just kind of double check, how much cash do I have in my wallet? If you're not super meticulous about updating those transactions. So then those are the different methods. Thankfully, you'll have this video recording link so you can kind of review those and think about them. It is also documented on our help center, the first two methods, the simple and the tidy methods, just using the inserting rows manually. Both of those methods are on our help center. And then you'll have this video as a guide to kind of think about the other methods for using labs and the manual account tracking in the Tiller Money Feeds add-on. Now, one question I've seen come up a lot, even in the previous surveys when folks responded after the community webinar, what they want to see demoed was how to track cash transactions on the go, so on mobile. And I won't demo this fully, but the basic concept, which is also somewhat loosely documented on the Help Center, is this mobile cash tracking with a Google form. So I've just mocked this up already. You basically just create a Google form. You can do that from My Drive, New, More, and then Google Forms. This one basically is very basic. It just has a date, a description. I just pulled the categories in for my category sheet. I only have 22 of them, so it's not an overwhelming list, but then it does have this drop-down option, which is kind of nice. And I just pasted them in directly from this categories, just select them, copy, and then I just pasted in the first one, and then Google understands how to fill that down, the amount, and then the account. And then when you add the response, when you choose the responses, you can view them in a spreadsheet, and I selected an existing spreadsheet when I set that up. And so in this foundation template demo sheet, I actually have a cash sheet that's being filled by this form. And so the basic idea is that while you're on the go, you can access this from your phone pretty easily. You can email it to yourself when you like send. You can just input your email. Then you can get it via your email on your phone. And then you just pull this up and fill it out on the go. And then the transactions will be pretty closely formatted in this cash sheet. And then you just paste them over into your transaction sheet. And so that is like one workflow where you can do it mobile, because it's not the best experience to try to like insert a row from your mobile phone. You can't access the add-ons from your mobile phone. So that form method is the easiest way to do it if you're trying to do it from mobile. And that's a question we've gotten a lot. So that was everything I had to demo. So if Randy, I don't know if you have any feedback about any of that, or if you have other ideas, especially with this. I worked through it with a community member. It was an idea, and we revised it. So I think it's pretty solid. The only thing was like, maybe if there were transactions like with the transfers, how that might affect things.
Yeah, I think well, first of all, this is great. I haven't actually seen all this stuff, Heather, so it's so cool to see that you're so many steps ahead. Yeah, just say on that formula, you'd really want to make sure that those the sum ifs columns match up with what's actually in your spreadsheet. Most of our templates kind of find the columns and then try to remap them to match yours. This one, you'll need to just be diligent and make sure that E is the amount and H in this case is the account. And then the only other thing I was going to say is that we have those month and week columns in the transactions sheet as kind of helpers for easy filtering and queries. But the truth is that most of our templates don't use them heavily. So they're probably not that important unless you personally have built workflows around those columns in your own sheet.
Yeah, makes sense. Good call. Thanks, Randy. All right, so let's dive into the questions. So it looks like we just have one question right now. If you have other questions, go ahead and get them into the Q&A. If we don't have a lot of questions, we'll just wrap, early. So it looks like Kenneth asks, can you start with, say, under the mattress cash, an initial cash balance that may have occurred before an ATM transaction has been posted to the transaction sheet? I think the answer is yes. You would just you could just manually add the transactions, and you could even just fund the balance, with this manual account workflow. If you did want to just continue to manually update the balances in the sidebar workflow here, so you'd have that, historical trends, or, the history entries over time for the cash transactions, you could just have your balance start out. You can even choose a date in the past for this. Like, let's say that I wanted it to start, I don't know, beginning of May. And then I can, put the balance in for whatever that looks like, and then update it. And then it's gonna give me that balance from the beginning of May. My cash account was X. And so I think that's one way you could fund it. Randy, do you have other ideas or thoughts on that question?
No, I was just going to say, it's important to remember that the transactions and balance history sheets are yours, and that you can add rows to them and add columns to them and fund an account with an balance that you create. Basically, the feeds add-on adds data to those sheets, but as long as you kind of follow the formatting so the templates still work, there's really no reason to not feel like you can change those sheets and have them still work for you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Definitely customize them to your heart's content. The guidelines we recommend are just don't change any of the pre-populated headers, because that can break the feeds, and don't change the name of the tabs, specifically transactions and balance history. But really, it's best to just not change any of the tab names. We've seen some things break as a result of that. So, but that's a good question, Kenneth. Let me know if you need more detail there, or if that explanation helped. And then if anybody else has other questions, please pop them into the Q&A. It looks like that was everything we had so far.
Yeah, feel free to ask if you have questions about other tools and workflows as well.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to demo other stuff, or answer any questions folks have. All right, let's see here. We did get another one in. I have transactions in two currencies, USD and Mexican pesos. My Mexican transactions are all in cash or from accounts not supported by Tiller. I'm fine tracking balances in USD. I've been manually inputting USD values based on either the transaction date exchange rates or, when possible, the exchange rate from whenever I turn dollars into pesos. Wondering if you have ideas for how to make that process a little less manual. Do you have thoughts, Randy? That one.
This is a toughie.
Yeah.
Wait, so I'm trying to understand. So it sounds like the peso numbers, Heather, are you reading those as manual entries? Or
Yeah, it says my Mexican transactions are all in cash or from accounts not supported by Tiller. So I think they're manually inputting any transactions associated with the pesos. Fine tracking balances in USD. Been manually inputting USD values based on either transaction date exchange rates or, when possible, the exchange rate from whenever I turn dollars into pesos. The only ideas I have, Randy, while you kind of think about it a little more, are there is one thread so far in the community on what is it, currency. I think that's probably multi-currency support. You can see we got some feature requests. Here's one about I think multi-currency. We only officially support USD. I think that the closest thing that I've ever seen other customers do, and we don't have any good examples or documentation yet, but there's this equal Google Finance function that you can use to help. Basically, you can have a separate column. My understanding is that you can use a separate column to help do the currency conversion, and then have that then map somehow to the amount column. I don't know exactly how to use it. We haven't explored much just because we're really focused on USD right now, but that may be something that if you're familiar with Google Finance, or if that at least gives you a hint in the right direction to kind of look into and see. I know some customers have done it with success, just haven't got anybody sharing specific workflows yet.
Yeah, just two quick notes on that. One is just peeking at the Google Finance function. It does look like you can actually specify a date. So you could have, so effectively, if the exchange rate changes, you can actually have it represent the day when you made the withdrawal or converted the currency. And the other thing I was going to say is, with multi-currency, almost all of our templates use the amount column, but you can add another column in parallel to the amount that is in a different currency, and then potentially use formulas to sort of map to a USD currency for reporting purposes.
That makes sense. So hopefully that gives you some ideas on direction, or if you figure something out, you maybe chime into this thread and see, if maybe this guy figured it out, or if you figure it out. It's always helpful to contribute in the community to help others as well. All right. Any other questions out there on anything specific to tracking cash or otherwise? We'd be happy to take them.
Heather, it looks like there's a question in the chat from Nella.
Got it. Let's see here. I have a very basic question. When I installed the Tiller Foundation template, something went wrong. Can you tell me how to start over when I try to jump from the use template link to link sheet without this install step in the G Suite Marketplace? I'm happy to discuss offline. So if I think I understand, when I try to jump from the use template to link sheet without the install step, I think basically if you've already got the add-on installed, let's go here to the console. When you go to create a spreadsheet and then you start with Google Sheets, you click use template here. It's going to make a copy of the foundation template on your Google Drive, whatever one is signed into the browser. So just keep that in mind. If you have multiple Google accounts signed into the browser, that can cause hiccups sometimes. So just make sure it's the one that you use to subscribe to Tiller Money. And then you won't see the install or add to sheets option. You should see use. And then if you just click use here, it should then go to the link sheet step. So I would guess if there's something disconnected in between those two things, it's probably related to the being signed into multiple users and the multiple Google accounts in the browser. And if that doesn't help, Nella, just reach out and support. We'll be happy to help kind of get you through that. All right, let's see if there were other questions in the chat. I have a card of T-Mobile Money. I don't see any way to add it to my Tiller account. It may be that we don't support T-Mobile Money right now. I would just maybe check out on our help center. There's a help doc about like supported institutions, and that you should be able to just double check. If you're not finding it in search results, maybe try just entering the URL into the add accounts screen here. I can kind of just quickly demo that if I can close out some of these windows. And yeah, if anybody has other questions they want to pop into the Q&A before we wrap here, but once you click add accounts, if you just paste in the URL that you use, like chase.com, for example, you'll get a lot of results, and that may help you find the right result. If you don't find it that way, it's likely that's not supported and you'd need to just manually track it. So. All right, well, I think that's everything. There's not any other questions. Anything you want to add, Randy? Or are you going to go jump in that river?
I wish. It's cold. Yeah, no, thanks everyone for joining. Look forward to seeing you guys. Is it in 2 weeks, Heather?
In 2 weeks, yeah, on the 23rd, I believe, of July. I can't believe it's like already, I can't believe we're in July already. This year has passed by so quickly. Thanks everyone for joining. Don't forget to take a few minutes to fill out that quick survey. Y'all have a great day. See you, Randy.
Thank you.